What's up, everyone? It's Alan's Movie Talk, back at it again. And with us going into February, I figured now would be the time to go back and talk about the movies I saw in January and rank them from worst to best. So, in total, I saw 6 movies in the month of January, and it was kind of a weird month because 4 of them were new releases that actually came out in January. 2 of them were films. One film in particular was released last year. I was just late, getting to it and watching it. And then the other one was an odd one because the wide release was in January, but the film had been screened, on a limited release and then at festivals a few months prior, back in 2024. So it was a weird month. Notoriously, January isn't the best month for films in general. So this ranking, was definitely a weird one. It was a few good movies, and then some okay, and then for me one that was just terrible. So let's get started and talk about the films that I saw in January. So coming in at number 6 and in dead last is going to be Mel Gibson's new film Flight Risk. In general, I was very confused as to why this was the film that Mel Gibson decided to come back from after making Hacksaw Ridge a number of years ago. This is not in the vein of what he normally does with films. Usually he produces like epic films that are Oscar potential worthy, and that was not what this was. This is just a 80s 90s action film, B action movie, to be honest. And it just it wasn't great. This definitely to me screamed like Mel just needed a job, and this is kind of what was going to pay the bills at the time. When you look at it, it's a very simple premise, which, I thought we could have some fun with if the movie didn't take itself seriously in a lot of the aspects and for most of the runtime. The characters are just so inconsistent in tone with one another. I mean, Topher Grace is basically playing Eric Foreman in another episode of That 70s Show. Mark Wahlberg is playing like a really over-the-top, cartoonish villain who's also like kind of predatorily rapey throughout most of the runtime. So it was just very weird performances. And then the girl cop, who's like the main character technically, is just taking it ultra serious throughout the entire film. And there's just a bunch of logic gaps. Things just happen for the plot to move forward. And, it wasn't as fun as I thought it could have been, right? Like, there was some in the beginning of the film, maybe in the first half, I felt like there was some moments, where we were having, so bad it's good moments, which I had some fun with. But then, like halfway through the film, it gets ultra serious, and then we're kind of just in a mediocre to bad, B action film that I felt like if it would have had some more fun with its premise, could have been a good time. But ultimately, this is just what you would expect out of a January film. So this comes in at dead last for me at number 6. Coming in at number 5 is going to be Steven Soderbergh's new film Presence. This film I felt like offered a very unique perspective to the horror genre, where essentially the whole film takes place from the POV of the ghost in this house with this family. And I thought that was a very unique way to do this film and to offer something new to the horror genre and like the haunted ghost, haunted house style film. The cinematography in this film is absolutely beautiful. Everything is shot very well. The camera angles that they use, from the POV of the ghost was done very, very well. But the problem for me is that the novelty of that concept wears off pretty quickly. I mean, it's within like the first 15 to 20 minutes that I didn't really like. That alone just did not make me interested in the film. And then the pacing in this film is god awful. I mean, it's only an hour and 25 minutes, and realistically, like the first hour and 10 minutes, not a whole lot happens. A lot of the characters in this film are paper thin. So, I wasn't that intrigued or invested into the film. I felt like it could have done a lot more things with its concept to, stand out and stand on its own as a very unique horror film. And then, I say horror film, but like it's really not a horror film. Nothing scary or, in the vein of typical horror movies really happens in this film. So, you know, to me, it was just a lot of wasted potential, a lot of meandering, a lot of, you know, developing characters, I guess you could say, that we don't really care about and that aren't that likable. I did feel like the ending was done pretty well. Like I said, that last like 15 to 20 minutes, the movie finally kicks off, and I feel like, you know, if that section of the film, if that would have been the type of film we got throughout the entire runtime, it would have been a much more enjoyable film for me. So this one just feels really like wasted potential and a disappointment, even though I do think there are some good elements of the film. So coming in at number 5 for January is going to be Presence. And coming in at number 4 is going to be Leigh Whannell's Wolfman. For me, this is the most disappointing film of the month. It's not the worst film of the month, but it was the one that I think I had the highest expectations for, and it just came very short of those expectations. You know, Leigh Whannell to me is a fantastic director, specifically in the horror genre. I felt like he's done some great things, specifically with his previous film, Invisible Man, where my expectations were pretty high going into this film. And, you know, in the film, he does do a good job at setting up, you know, the atmosphere and the tension. He does, you know, the story is very simplistic, and I think that is the part of it that is the most disappointing to me, because a lot of his great movies were very clever, and they had very clever scripts, and they kept you guessing throughout the entire runtime of the film. I went back and I watched Invisible Man after watching Wolfman, thinking to myself, like, did I just have too high expectations here, you know, going into this film, and it's not as good as I remember? No, Invisible Man is as good as I remember, and the script was just as good as I remember, and this film just lacked severely when it came to that. Not to mention, too, you know, it was a very simplistic story, very paper thin characters. They weren't really developed. We didn't really care all that much. And then the whole concept, you know, of the Wolfman, it was unique, in the sense that it was treated more as like a virus and a sickness rather than a curse, like it is in most other iterations. But the design of it was, I don't know. I didn't really like it. It was really more man than wolf, and I didn't think it looked that great. You know, it was better than the Halloween Horror Nights sneak preview we got a couple months back when that was going on, but it wasn't that much better. So yeah, I mean, this movie was just a mixed bag for me. There were things about it that I enjoyed, you know, which is why it's number 4, not last. I still think on a technical level, Leigh Whannell did good, you know, building the tension, the atmosphere. It was a film that looked very good, and it was shot very well. But yeah, Wolfman to me is my biggest disappointment from the month. And I feel like it's one that the more I've sat on, the more disappointed I've gotten from it. Just because I know the heights that Leigh Whannell can reach, specifically in horror films. I know how good of a director and a writer he can be. So I'm very curious if there's going to be anything that's going to come out about this film, you know, with maybe behind the scenes stuff where he was maybe shackled, or, you know, maybe it's just a miss. I don't know. You know, I'm still going to have high hopes whenever he does another movie in the future. So, you know, yeah. But to me, Wolfman was a disappointment, the biggest disappointment from January. So it comes in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is going to be the biopic about UK pop star Robbie Williams, where he is portrayed as an ape throughout the entire film. So that, for me, this was one of the bigger surprises of the month, because I really had no expectations going into this film. I saw the trailer and I was like, I don't know who this movie is made for, especially in the States. Nobody knows who Robbie Williams is. So it was a very baffling choice to make this film and make him as a monkey the entire time. But when you see the film, you actually understand why they did that, because then it takes a very simplistic and a cliched biopic story, and gives it a unique and fresh spin on it. Like, the story of this film is not really much different from a lot of the biopics that we see nowadays. You know, it's about rising and falling and then rising again, and, you know, so the story of Robbie Williams isn't that different from what we've seen before, or that interesting for that matter. But by making him a CGI ape, it kind of puts it in a different perspective of how he views himself. And it's not even acknowledged by anyone, right? Like he's an ape, and nobody says anything. Nobody mentions it. They basically the movie and the story treats him as if he is human and is a human character, and everyone else views him that way. But as an audience member, it kind of offers a unique perspective, on that type of genre of film, the biopic film, and doesn't really it causes it not to be stale. So, and I enjoyed that. And it's a very high energy film. The musical numbers are actually done very well. And I'm someone who's not a fan of musicals, so I thought that was pretty impressive. And yeah, that made me enjoy the film that much more. And, I saw that it was the same guy who did The Greatest Showman. I've never seen that film either, but a lot of people have praise for it. So, kind of makes sense that I felt like the musical numbers were actually done well in this movie. So yeah, overall, I had a good time with this film. I didn't love it. It wasn't anything. It's not anything that's gonna like crack my top 10 or anything. But for a film that I really had no or very low expectations for, I felt like it over delivered, and I had a good time with it. So, Better Man comes in at number 3 for the month of January. So now my top 2 for the month of January. These films were both neck and neck. It was really hard for me to pick which one I enjoyed more. I don't think it's an indictment of which one I put at number 2 and 1 of either of these films. It just really comes down to more like what my personal taste is and what my type of genre that I like is. So when I reveal my final 2, again, it's not an indictment on either of these films. It's just more my personal taste. I think both of these films were done very, very well. So with that said, my number 2 is gonna be The Wild Robot, which I said at the beginning of this video that there was a film here that was released last year that I didn't get to watch, and this was it. I had heard all the praise about this film, and I sat down and watched it one night when I just really had nothing to do. And man, this film is incredible. From a parent, I have 2 kids, so as a parent, this film got me more emotionally invested in the story and just emotional in general than I thought it ever could. The themes that this movie tackles about life, death, purpose, parenthood, everything about it is just done so beautifully, and it tells such a heartwarming and emotional story that I can't recommend this film enough. This is a film too that is for the entire family. You can sit down with your kids and watch this movie. You get a bunch of enjoyment out of it, and then they'll love it as well. And I love when a movie's like that, because then that means no matter where I'm at, that I can put this movie on and everyone's going to enjoy it. The animation style in this film is great. DreamWorks tends to do really good when it comes to that, so I didn't really expect that to be a letdown or anything, but I felt like the animation style was very good. And the voice actors in the film do a great job as well, and they help bring out the emotions in those big moments in the film. I really felt like too that the pacing of the film was done very well. It kind of started off a little slow, in my opinion. I was like 30, 40 minutes into the film, and I was like, wow, is this really as good as everybody's making me think it is? Or is it just, it hits the right emotional beats or what? I don't know. Or is it just not for me? And then the movie has some events take place, and the tone shifts kind of, and yeah, it really knows how to tug at your heartstrings in the best way possible. And it has one of the most emotionally satisfying stories and character arcs for all the characters in the film. So I love this film. I mean, this is one of the better animated films I've seen in quite some time. The reason that I put it at number 2 is, like I said, it's really just personal taste. I'm not the highest person on animation films. An animation film really has to be like great for me to love it. And Wild Robot is. It's just compared to my number 1, that is a movie that is more in the vein of what I like and what I want in films. So that's the only reason it comes in at number 2. But The Wild Robot is a fantastic film, and I'm honestly frustrated at myself that I waited so long to watch it. Because it's just a great movie, and that's all I can really say about it. The Wild Robot comes in at number 2 for the month of January. But coming in at number 1 is going to be Companion for me. Like I said, this is a film that is just more in the vein of what I love, which is, horror, thriller, comedy, kind of all in one. And I thought this film was great. I had high expectations for it, even though I felt like the marketing kind of spoiled a big part of the film for everyone. I still had high expectations, and I felt like those expectations were met. Sophie Thatcher and Jack Quaid give outstanding performances in this film, and their chemistry with one another is just fantastic. The story is very clever, and it takes you for twists and turns throughout the entire runtime. Even knowing what I knew from the marketing of this film, I felt like there was like 3 or 4 twists in the narrative that kept me on the edge of my seat and kept me invested the whole time with the film. And the themes that they, cover in this film, I felt like were done very well, specifically, I don't really want to go into it, but if you haven't seen it, don't watch this part. Specifically, like, robot versus man, AI, the implications that AI and robots can have on society, goes into toxic masculinity, controlling relationships. I mean, there are a bunch of themes that this film, covers and talks about and handles in the narrative, and I felt like it was just done masterfully. The movie is paced perfectly as well. The world that it builds is more of a futuristic world. It's not a world that we're there yet, but it's a world that when you watch, you think to yourself, like, this could be our world very, very soon. So for me, there's really not a lot of negatives that I had on the film. And I feel like this is the first truly great film of 2025. And I'd be surprised if, it doesn't end up in my top 10 best films of the year list at the end of the year, because this is just a film that is for me. This is this is the type of film I like and I enjoy and what I go to the movies to see. So, so can't really give any more praise to it. Companion comes in at number 1 for the month of January of the films I've seen. But all right, guys, that is my list for my favorite films from January of this year. Like I said, I only got to see 6 films, so if there was any films that you guys thought that were great that I missed out on, go ahead and comment below. Let me know. Give me your ranking on what you thought were the best films from January. And everyone, have a great day.